Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. Hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday and week so far. I'm excited to be here, and I hope that you are too. And if you're excited, can you please find the chat and drop a comment telling us where you're logging in from so that we can be sure that you can see and hear us, please. All right. We have a really awesome webinar planned for you today, and we're going to be diving into that in just a few moments. But if this is your first time joining one of these digital events, welcome. The SE Ranking team holds webinars and roundtables and workshops and onboarding days to share some insightful and actionable information with the SEO community to help you make the most of our tools and to give you some takeaways that will help you increase traffic to your website. Today we're going to be talking with an expert on the topic of reporting and why reporting is misleading in 2023 and the top level KPIs that can break your SEO. And this topic is so important because reporting is super tricky. It can literally be the bridge between the buy-in that you need from clients and executives and being script. My name is Lily Borger. I'm a content strategist and writer who works with brands like WordPress, Zapier, and I'll be moderating this webinar today. And our guest for today who will be joining us is Jerry White. He's an SEO and analytics consultant who works currently with as the head of SEO at Other. Jerry, we're so happy to have you with us. Can you please take a few moments to say a few words about yourself?
Hey, absolutely. So actually, I'm just leaving Oda at the moment. I'm going to be starting at a company called Riverside, who do sort of podcasting software next week. So that's kind of an interesting time for me. I think one of the first things I'll be doing will be looking at the data behind what they've got, what they're doing, and where they're going, and seeing what I kind of need to fix up. So I'm really looking forward to it. Bit of background about me: I've worked agency side, client side. I've worked across brands from McDonald's right through to Gordon Ramsay, Weight Watchers. I've probably been everywhere. I mean, the longest kind of time I've been anywhere was Just Eat for about 4 or 5 years. But like I say, now I'm kind of looking at a new role with a podcasting software. So yeah, I'm going to enjoy it.
Now, this is so fantastic. Like, I'm a big fan of Riverside. All of the podcasts I know, they use Riverside. We're going to be watching you.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So, like I said, SEO Ranking has tools and features for businesses of all sizes, whether you're a freelancer or you run a digital agency or you work in-house as a marketer. And just to remind everyone, don't hesitate to write your questions in the chat. Jerry will answer all of the questions when he's done with the presentation. We will take about an hour to complete the session, and we'll send you a link to the replay and the presentation. And there's also a special bonus for those of you who make it to the end. So please stay until the end. All right, Gary, please.
Okay. All right, so I guess I'll kick off. I think the key thing is the fact that I've been looking at SEO data now for 20 years in one sort or another. And I guess that I've probably ranted about it because a lot of the time people give me data and I know somehow it's either wrong or it just doesn't say anything. Like I say, I've been in SEO for 20 years. I've been doing lots of things. I've been around. Yeah. Right. How often have you kind of been told by an agency or a client or somebody, oh no, the bounce rate went up and they're kind of really worried about this, or the conversion rate went down? People seem to be really stressed about sort of some site level metrics when actually the problem isn't necessarily that the conversion rate went down or the bounce rate went up, but the fact that people aren't looking at the data in the right way. And I guess what I want at the end of this is you to look at the data slightly differently and ask smarter questions. I mean, if I got these kind of questions or these kind of statements aimed at me from my SEO agency, I'd be very tempted to kind of turn around and say, you're fired. By the way, hey, Alan Sugar, that's another story altogether. But I do kind of quite like the kind of comment that he gives, basically, where it's almost like, yeah, if you do it wrong, you don't get too many chances. I did actually ask on Twitter why so many people hate SEO reports. And they basically say they don't say anything, they say too much, or they're confusing. So it's almost like everybody's got a rant about it. In fact, when I tweeted it out, I saw hundreds of messages. I kind of said to them, CMO answers, what is your business dislike in SEO reporting? Is it too much detail, too many acronyms, data not matching? What is it you really hate? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? And so many people came back with so many bits and pieces. So, these slides, by the way, are available afterwards. So just give me a shout and I will kind of tell you where to get them. But what a lot of people were saying was nobody cares. Poor communication. There's no what and why. It's just an export. I mean, that's one of my personal hates, by the way. If I see somebody export something from a tool and they don't give any kind of key analysis, there's no what and why, I will not read it. I will not want it. So, yep, this is basically going to be a long rant about metrics. We talk a lot about rates like conversion rate, bounce rate, or click-through rate. And this basically means per 100. This is how people look at these things in terms of, a kind of site-wide method. And I see these metrics used so often. So, often people talk about these extensively. And as I say, it's often treated as a site-wide thing without any analysis, without any breakdown. So if you're looking at this kind of site-wide, this is where I will start to rant. KPIs should be smarter. And HubSpot say, why does the bounce rate matter? And they do have a lot of detail and explanation on it, but they kind of say that if somebody bounces, the visitor didn't find what he or she is looking for, or the web page was too difficult to use. And these are the only explanations for it, no others. And people often have things like bounce rate benchmarks, and I think this is the biggest problem. I was about to swear then, but I'm not going to. This is the biggest problem in some of the data that I've seen. What I mean by this is the people kind of go, it should be this or it should be that. But actually, the more that you look at something, the more that you analyze something, the more you realize that actually everything shouldn't be quite like that. And this includes, and if I take a look at one particular example, let's take a look at SE ranking, which is, the website that we're kind of talking about today. And so SE ranking, they created a web page about the nuts and bolts of SEO for spas, single page applications. If you know anything about spas or single page applications or progressive web apps, or whatever you want to call them, you'll know that this is really, really complicated. And there's a lot of problems with it. There's a lot of issues with it and stuff like that. And they've done a fantastic in-depth article on it. But by adding this, the bounce rate will go up. Lots of people will look at this one page, they'll kind of look into it, their conversion rate will go down because a lot of the people that look in this page, they're not going to be buying SE ranking at this particular time. And what is also interesting is the click-through rate will often go down. The reason why is the more content you add, the more keywords you start to rank for. But you will increase brand awareness, you're going to increase conversions, and you're going to increase traffic. And these are the three things that are actually probably more important. Let's be honest, if you get more traffic, but less of it converts, but some of it still converts, then that's a good thing. So let's talk about this click-through rate thing. Some of my slides have got slightly messed up because I'm using an online thing, but that's another story. So, CTR does not equal traffic, but it helps. So if I get 10 good head terms and I get a 10% click-through rate, then that's like, say, 100 sessions. But if I get an adequate click-through rate, but 10 times as or 1,000 times as much traffic, terms, then suddenly I get huge amounts more traffic. And so that's way more traffic, but a far lower click-through rate. I've got some examples of where this has happened. I mean, obviously, if you are looking at click-through rate and you are looking at it in any kind of detail, then if you can improve it at all, then it will help considerably. But these things like click-through rate should be taken at a keyword level. They should be taken at a site level. Sorry, they should not be taken at a site level. One of my favorite examples is a website I was working on last year, which was, of course, Oda. This is an international supermarket. And as we went into one country, what happened was the click-through rate dropped significantly and the average position went up. If you don't know, this is kind of a screenshot from Google Search Console, which I've kind of modified slightly. But what had happened was the fact that we had opened up the website to the search engines. So like I say, our click-through rate went straight down. Our the average ranking went straight down. So these two kind of key metrics that people stress over dropped massively. But we went from 44 top 10 keywords to 1.6 thousand top 10 keywords. So of course, the impact on sales and traffic and all the key metrics was actually really, really positive. So we do this thing where we kind of look at metrics in silo and kind of don't analyze them, when what we should be doing is really asking ourselves, what do these metrics actually mean and what's been the impact? And like I say, even Google Search Comps, even Google themselves have a a template which has click-through rate as one of the kind of the key KPIs, or one of the KPIs that they use within the screenshot. So this isn't a mistake that nobody makes. This is a mistake that everybody makes, including Google. I mean, like I say, what does the mobile click-through rate on this particular thing mean, and why is it so, why is it being taken at a site-wide level? And this template, it doesn't even allow you to drill into it by keyword or anything like that. So I do find this kind of data points that even Google are providing you is kind of misleading if it's in a template that you're supposed to reuse. One of the things that I do find is quite important to look at is like the funnel. So I always look at things like all of the aspects of the funnel: how many impressions we're getting, how many clicks we're getting, how many sessions, engaged users, and then of course conversions. The number of impressions, you want to look at it by country and by device. A really good example of this is I've worked on a lot of international websites and they're getting the impressions in the wrong country. So we're not too worried about them having a lot of impressions in the wrong country, as long as they're getting a lot of impressions in the right country. If people are coming into it from the wrong country, I'm not worried too much, because that means engagement and other bits and pieces. So it's not necessarily the biggest issue. But what is important is the fact that, we're getting enough impressions from the right country. And sometimes we want to know like the devices that we're on. And the reason that we want to know that is we want to see basically how people are seeing the search results pages, because that is important. And of course, this gives us a huge amount of data as well of brand versus non-brand, which URLs are kind of being featured and where. So there is a huge amount of data actually available at this point. And then, of course, we have clicks, which we can do exactly the same thing. We can have our brand versus non-brand. The click-through rate for brand, of course, is normally very, very high, but you'll find this drops and rises according to whether or not we're doing paid search or not paid search. And we can see which URLs are being clicked on, not being clicked on. So there's a huge amount of data at every single point through the session, through the funnel. So we can look at, which country people are coming into, if they're new versus returning users. Are they logged in? Are they logged out? Are they engaged? And we can start to kind of look all the way down. One of the interesting things is the fact that in GA4, they removed the bounce rate in favor of kind of an engaged session. I actually, despite the fact I've been ranting about bounce rate, and I'll carry on ranting about bounce rate, I actually still think it's a good metric. And I'll tell you why, is because actually it's a predictable metric that if you slice and dice it correctly, you can start to find issues. So the fact that they've actually kind of almost removed it in GA4, I actually think is an issue in education, not in application. And of course, right at the bottom, there's conversions, average order value, revenue, signups, new users, mailing lists. There's a lot of key metrics that are very, very important. And actually following people through this funnel, that's where the value lies. There is, by the way, a break in the middle, of course. Most of us do understand this if we've been working in SEO long enough, that we know that we get impressions and clicks from Google Search Console or Bing or Yandex or whichever. And then there's the other side of it, which is the on-site analytics. And these two can't completely be joined up, but we can start to kind of look at some things. So, if we've got 100 keywords going to a page, we don't know which one of those is converting, but we tend to see that there's thematic information kind of going to a single page. And so we can kind of go, these sets of keywords are probably converting at this kind of rate. So if we go back to this page and start talking about conversion rate again, we will see exactly what I'm talking about. So, we kind of find that I've shared it, for instance, on a Slack channel internally at work, kind of going, hey guys, have a look at this for some project that we're working on. And what will be the impact of this will be that developers are seeing it, people who are interested in what's happening, how to do a PWA or a single page app, or marketers who want to know more about PWAs and what their benefits are. And these are potentially customers of search engine SE rankings. So it really does improve the brand recognitions there. And also SEOs like myself who are already customers of SE ranking. And it's kind of quite interesting to see basically that these people are potentially already customers. So I might be coming back and sharing more from the blog. And of course, PPC people who, they want to understand the tracking details that I've shared, but they might not be interested in SEO ranking exactly in the same way that the SEOs are. So many people go into the page, very few of them can actually buy. But many people going to the page and sharing it with many people means it's much more viral. These people are sharing it in Slack channels, on Twitter, even WhatsApp. I get a lot of my information nowadays from WhatsApp group, which is kind of quite terrifying in 2022, 2023 now. But basically, it's really important to know that people will be coming from lots of different places. So more people finding it, more people sharing it. This kind of goes on. And Google knows when things are being shared. People go into a page a lot from different places is a positive sign. And if you look at the SEO ranking blog, it now ranks for thousands of relevant keywords for SEO marketers, for everything from how to set up Google Alerts to the robots disallow directory, lots of keywords which are super relevant to SEOs, which will kind of make people realize that actually SEO ranking is a great site as a resource, as well as a tool, as well as something else. So when they're looking at, when somebody turns around to them and says, hey, we need a toolkit, it's on the top of the list. And of course, the bounce rate goes up and the conversion rate goes down, but visibility goes up and traffic goes up. So flicking back to bounce rate again and carrying on my rant, this is a page that I've looked at very, very frequently. The reason why is I go to Norway quite regularly, and every time I go to Norway, I kind of Google how big a bag can I have. I really should know it by now. I always take the same bag, so I don't know why I've been to this webpage quite so much. But by the time I go to this page, I've already booked my flight. When I go to this page, I look at this one page, have a quick look at it, and then I bounce away immediately. If I have a bad user experience, have to visit multiple pages. I'll have to click around. If I have to click around, that is a bad user experience. And exactly the same if I look at, who's that? EasyJet. I will look at it, have a look at it quickly, go, okay, yep, that's right. That's the size of my bag, and go away. But again, if this page wasn't on the site, what would happen is I'd go, oh, okay, I'm allowed a small cabin bag. I don't know how big that is. I'll contact them. I'll call them up. I'll contact them somehow through the online chat or something. And this costs money for businesses. So it's really, really important for businesses to kind of understand that they can save money and have a good experience. And not all of the users that have a good experience and save the money are going to be not bouncing and converting. So slicing and dicing your users is important. Slicing and dicing your content is important. And understanding intent is absolutely critical. And of course, there's other things which will kind of make sure that you kind of understand, things like bounce rate and conversion rate, things like out of stock. One of the things that I've seen very few websites do is segment their pages in analytics as to in stock or out of stock. And if you start to do things like that, you can really start to do smart things. There's a great video that I'll link to at the end by a guy called Matt Curry. And he talks about the fact that, very few businesses look at how much paid traffic, for instance, is going to the out of stock pages, how much traffic is going to different things. And it is crazy just how much money is being wasted, or how much people don't know about how many pages, how much content is out of stock pages. I love using tools to kind of go like any tool like Screaming Frog or something like that to kind of go, okay, when I'm doing it, tell me which of the pages are in stock, which ones are out of stock. And it's really important to kind of do that kind of analysis. The other interesting thing is how much traffic is going to a 404 page. And of course, this is where the bounce rate is actually interesting. One thing that nobody knows is what is the bounce rate of the 404 page. And the reason why is because no one sort of sets it up in a way that Google Analytics historically like to sort of say how much is the bounce rate of this particular page group. It's quite an easy fix. All you have to do is basically set it up as a content group. You can set it up like that, and then you can do it quite easily in theory. Now, the biggest problem I've found recently is the fact that a lot of us nowadays in Europe, we don't fire analytics until you click accept cookies. And how often do you land on a 404 page and bounce and click, yes, I want to accept the cookies before you bounce? Nobody. So it is one of those things where I'm still trying to understand how we can kind of get some of the data back that, we're kind of starting to lose. But I know there are ways around it. It's just kind of whether or not we can learn a bit from organic and other bits and pieces. So yeah, that is one of the issues that we're finding at the moment. The other thing is in my size. Now, I actually have size 13 feet, which is quite unusual in the UK. I'm sort of slightly outside the average. But it does mean that, I go to a web page and I kind of go, okay, they haven't got the trainers in my size. I mean, these trainers seem like an absolute bargain. 12 quid for some really nice trainers. I was pretty looking forward to kind of buying them if they came in my size. They don't. But what was interesting is the fact if there'd been like a, do we have something in your size link, which I've put on a couple of websites that I've worked on over my time. And it's surprising how quickly people will click on that. They'll see if there's something in their size, and yep, they still might not buy, but they won't bounce as quickly. So there's a much higher propensity to convert. So this is where we start to look at bounce rate differently, and we can start to kind of go, okay, bounce rate does have its value. We can sort of see a page with a high bounce rate, and we can then fix it. Anton, I'm size 13. So the other thing that's really, really important is knowing what if the data is actually correct. And I mean, Sophie's there in the chat somewhere, and Sophie and I have kind of gone through a lot of websites together where we've kind of looked at the data and gone, nope, this is incorrect. There's something wrong here. We know the data's wrong. We can't quite figure it out, or the data's just not quite correct. I mean, One of my favorite examples is the conversion rate, is the fact that we looked at a website which suddenly fell through the floor when they introduced social logins. The conversion rate dropped massively. However, what was interesting was the fact that the conversion rate for Facebook went to 42%, and the conversion rate from Google organic went up to 36%. If you don't think about conversion rates, it's normally about, I don't know, 5%, 6%. So this kind of massive change in conversion rate was worrying and weird. But it turns out basically that when people came in from these social logins, that it was changing the referrer to Google or changing the referrer to Facebook. So suddenly, the true source was lost. And this kind of data happens so often, and sometimes it's attributed to PayPal. Suddenly, PayPal's attributed to all of the all of the revenue instead of organic. So I think this is one of those kind of crazy things that when you look through the data, you start to see big, big issues. And it is something where when you know what you're looking for, it starts to kind of appear really quickly. But it's surprising how often people will be reporting on things and going, oh, yep, our paid conversion rate has dropped, our organic conversion rate has increased. That's great. So always question the data every single time. And basically, if you do this, one of the things that we did spot was the fact that because, of course, journeys were being split to Google and split to Facebook, it showed paid as being massively underperforming, and the conversion rate overall was massively dropped because, of course, the user was split between multiple sessions. And, it really is something where if you get the data incorrect and you're reporting on it, year-on-year data will say our conversion rate has dropped by X% since we introduced this feature or something similar. So basically, making sure the data is correct is such a key part of it. The other thing that I found funny is the sheer amount of times that we found UTM parameters in internal links. UTM parameters are great for when you're kind of marking up something like an affiliate source or a social source or something. There's a lot of reasons why a lot of people do want to use UTM parameters. Email is one of the critical ones. But do you know how often people will kind of take a UTM parametered link, maybe they've seen in an email, and just then put it into a link in a web page internally? And so you kind of go through the site, and suddenly you go from being an organic user, according to Google Analytics, to a email user straight within the same session. And if you convert, that means that you're kind of attributed to that. So it is kind of quite important to remember. I mean, goes back from 2019, and it still seems like people still don't know this. And this is one of my favorite memes. Basically, this is the feeling that you get. Segment the data to make it more usable. One of my favorite things is using Google Data Studio. I think it's now called Looker, but I'm still going to call it Google Data Studio. It is a challenge for me to call anything by the new name that Google keeps rebranding. I think Google My Business has just been named to Google. I can't even remember what it's called now, but I've heard everything get renamed. Anyway, Google Data Studio. Basically, what you can do in it is you can start to segment out your keywords. I mean, I did this when I was at Just Eat. There's a great blog post on it on Rise at 7 written by Sophie. And basically, you say, if this matches this, then it's brand. If it's not, then it's non-brand. And then, you can start to segment it up quite considerably. You can also do it by landing page. So if you say this landing page contains blog, then this is important for then this is a blog page, this is a category page, this is a product page, and this is a general page. This was one of the first things that I did when I started at Oda, was start to kind of look through all of the different pages and start to look at what was actually important, what was kind of making the difference, what pages were generating money, what pages weren't. And if you just look at all of the pages, then it doesn't work quite so well. And one of the best things about using it in Google Data Studio or Looker is the fact it's retrospective. So if you do it today, it kind of goes back in time. Whereas a lot of the time, if you start to segment out data, it only happens going forwards. So that's one of the things that I love about it. The other thing you can do is day of the week. Omisido has done a great article on this as well. I mean, he wrote it slightly differently. He kind of wrote every day out differently, but I kind of summarized it as being it's either a weekend or a weekday. And basically, one of the things that you can find out is people work differently on weekends versus weekdays. Often you'll find that on a weekend, people are more liable to use a mobile device or a tablet. I say tablet, no one's used tablets in years, but a tablet or something similar. And so their behavior changes. People are more likely to convert on a desktop, less likely to convert on a mobile. So understanding the different way in which people work is important. I mean, I I worked on a website that actually did a lot more of its traffic at the weekends on Friday nights, called Just Eat. So it was quite important for us to kind of really look at like the peak times versus the off-peak times. And interestingly as well, I could also segment out whether a restaurant was open or not, because by looking at that, then we get a very different idea of what conversion rate really looks like. And so we could kind of look at pages which weren't open yet, but opening later, because people sometimes order for later, but not usually. What people would often do is they'd be kind of deciding what they're going to order later. So, a family would be kind of going to the children, hey, do you want a pepperoni pizza or do you want a spicy beef? We also had quite a lot of them which were not taking orders, so I kind of made sure that we sort of segmented them out so as we could start to look at the impact and how much traffic was going to these particular pages, what was the conversion rate of these pages. So it wasn't just a case of looking at these pages differently, but looking at these pages isolated to kind of go, can we improve the user experience of somebody who lands on a web page where they're not taking orders? What should be in that box? How much traffic are we sending there? So, we can start to kind of understand, are we losing or gaining traffic and revenue? So suddenly we kind of get to better questions, basically. What is the product page conversion rate of our in-stock products from organic traffic in the target country? One website I did work on was, and this is actually 15 years ago, which makes me feel quite old. Basically, it was Speedos, and the Speedos UK site is speedos.com, and the American site was us.speedos.com as well. So basically, this was before hreflang was a thing, and we found that all of the traffic was coming into the UK site, not the US site. And there was a big pop-up which said, do you want to go to the US site? But it meant that our traffic was converting, the organic traffic was converting at 0.5%, whereas the paid traffic was converting at like 6% or something. The point is that we started to kind of see why is the organic traffic not converting well enough? And it was really obvious as soon as we started to look at the data and segment it intelligently. We can then start to really look at questions like which product pages have the highest bounce rate, the lowest conversion rate from organic traffic, what's the revenue per visit, and what was the change that we introduced last week from organic conversion rate. And then we can start to ask like and why, and if we did make a change and it improves something, can we repeat the change in other places? So for instance, one of the things that I often do is say blog posts, you're going to get a high bounce rate. But what if we introduced a widget which will allow people to kind of find related blog posts, continue their journey, do something similar to that? Should we add more video to the pages? I mean, one of the things about video is the fact that it works really well in organic search. However, good video costs money. And it's one of those big things where I kind of go, I want us to do more video because I know it makes more revenue. I know it makes more traffic. I know it appears in lots of places. A lot of the time when I'm searching for a product or something, I'll actually click on the video tab to kind of have a look at it because I'm that kind of nerdy person that wants to see it better. My point is that should our clients do more video? And they normally turn around and go, well, it costs this much. What's the revenue? And I kind of go, yeah. So basically, cost per video is X, increase in profit is Y. Is X greater than Y? Should we produce more videos? I mean, this is so simplified. I've never really been able to answer this particularly easily with clients because it's always more complicated. But I know 9 times out of 10, adding more video does help. What about you? This is your turn. If you want to, what is like a smart question that you put? Sorry, what is a smart question? Please put it in the chat. Feel free, and we'll kind of discuss it afterwards. Analysis is always better than reporting. One of my pet hates is when an SEO agency sends me a data studio type report thing without any insight or anything that's happened. I mean, year-on-year data, week-on-week data isn't exciting. It's only a part of the story. I always love it when I was working at Oda and I kind of went, why has revenue increased? Oh, we seem to be selling more lamb stew because of this seasonal thing. There's a reason why it's down, and can it be fixed? And if not, move on. I always think that if the SEO agency or the PPC agency doesn't provide that little bit of insight, then I don't understand what we're paying them for. One of the things that I do find quite frequently is the fact that they'll often look at things like title tags or something and say 1,200 title tags are too short. And again, this is just not helpful. And then when I look into it myself, I kind of go, okay, what I will then do is a distribution of the title tag lengths. And I'll go, okay, so 12% of the title tags are too short, but actually most of them are right. And which ones aren't? And then I'll sort of segment it again. And I'll kind of go, okay, just show me the ones for the blog posts. Just show me the ones that for the product pages. And then suddenly I start to look at actually all of the product pages are too short. And then therefore we can add something in. So good example here is you can optimize the product page title by adding in the product brand, and we could test it really quickly and easily just using Excel. And 84% of the title lengths will be the correct length. So this will be a change that we'll do, and then we can split test it and see if there's been an actual impact or whether or not it's actually reduced the click-through rate, and we can look into it. Because although what sounds like best practice doesn't always work out best. Oh, my slide's been messed up again, but basically here we go. Dashboards and reports. One of the things that I would always say is that, it's much more important to sort of say what and why, and segment and make it meaningful. Find out if your client has a North Star metric or a big, hairy, audacious goal. This is an expression I've heard relatively recently, but quite a lot. At Oda, we had quite a lot of big, hairy, audacious goals for different teams, as well as kind of a understanding of what we really wanted to do. So what? So basically, with clients, you should be educating them and you should tell them something. You should always be if you're the SEO expert, you should be telling them why we don't report on click-through rate as a KPI. We tell them why bounce rate is not a great KPI site-wide for SEO. And then we kind of tell them something basically different. We tell them, hey, we've spotted something. This is interesting. Why can we do this? We should automate reporting and repetitive tasks. We should question everything. We should give them recommendations. We should build insight and entertain. One of the things that I would do when I was at Oda was every week I'd find like the fun-rising keywords and give them to the commercial team and the growth team and say, hey, we've seen this go up. Oh, this is seasonal. One of my favorite ones, for instance, was the fact that we seem to be the only person that stocked a soft drink for Christmas. And I never realized Norwegians drank a special soft drink at Christmas. But, it was something that was quite entertaining, quite interesting, and also educational, because actually it meant that we made sure that we promoted the heck out of this everywhere. And this included all different channels from email through to everything. And again, if you don't make it entertaining, this is what happens. There's a few more resources. Basically, Crap Talks, which is a free event in London. Definitely sign up for them, but they've got a huge amount of videos online. And if you search for Mind the Product, Make Data Actionable by Matt Curry, that's also a great video. Fair warning, it's not something I'd watch at work because it's got a lot of sex toys when he was working with Love Honey. And when I've been watching this at work or sharing it, it's surprising how many people look at your screen weirdly. And that's it, guys. Thank you. So any questions?
Well, thank you so much, Jerry. That was just amazing. I came in with so many interesting insights that I hadn't thought about before. And I do have questions for you. I was wondering if anyone has questions, you can drop them in the comments and I can ask Jerry for you. But until we have, I can see some questions dropping, but let me ask mine first.
Okay.
So you talked about brand versus non-brand metrics at the point, and I was wondering, how would you prioritize? Like, what would you say how would you present the success of SEO based on brand versus non-brand metrics?
So a lot of the time, I have been my personal goal, for want of a better word, is increase the amount of non-brand traffic. That's not to say that brand traffic won't increase at the same time, but there's a lot of things that impact both. So I tend to segment them because I want non-brand traffic I want all traffic to increase, obviously, but what you tend to find is that non-brand traffic often leads back into brand traffic. So I will segment it out to kind of go, okay, this is how much non-brand traffic we're getting, and this is what we've done to increase it. A lot of the time, it is something where you'll see something that's kind of like got high keyword volume, generics. I mean, I split up my keywords into about 20 different categories. So for Oda, for instance, we had generics, which was like online supermarket type kind of terms. And then we had local, and then we had like actual brands, and then we had kind of like the more generics, which were things like product generics. And so, like I said, there was about 15 different ways I kind of split up all the keywords. And understanding what was kind of creating the revenue was quite important. And one of the things that we also did was look at like the destination pages. We had a lot of recipes on the site. And so we could look at things like the click-through rate of these and what was actually happening with these particular recipes and whether or not we could improve them or what was kind of happening. So yeah, it was quite useful to be able to sort of slice and dice the metrics as much as possible. One of the things I would say is the fact that we also treated the brand as being kind of important for above the line marketing. So, for instance, when we were doing TV, when we were sending vans out, when we're doing all sorts of bits and pieces, we could kind of go, oh, well, we've been featured in newspapers, we've been featured offline, we've been featured here, and suddenly we're seeing kind of a brand. So because I had a lot access to kind of some data that maybe the rest of the business didn't really value or didn't really understand as much, I could present this back to people like the PR team or different people who kind of didn't really look at it in the same way and kind of go, what did we do here? We've had this impact. So it was a positive in both directions.
Awesome, awesome. So more non-brand traffic, at first it's more non-brand, and then that leads to brand traffic, and that's how you know that SEO is succeeding.
Yeah.
We have a question from Max. It says, your funnel started with impressions. Is there any real value in SERPs tracking as a first step?
100%. So, I mean, one of the things that I do tend to do is look at, our visibility score, and I start a visibility score almost like day one, sort of first thing. And it doesn't matter whether or not if you're like ranking on page 2 of things, then you're going to get very, very few clicks. But at least you know that you're ranking. At least you know your index. You can start to look at how the pages look, and then you can start to shift them up. One of the things to know is that from page 2 to page 1 is a massive increase in clicks, and then page 1 from position 8 down to position 4 is another huge kind of shift in clicks. So whilst I sort of talk about this kind of click-through rate not being a key metric, when you slice and dice it down to a keyword at a country level, then suddenly you can kind of go, okay, we're getting a huge amount of impressions for this one keyword. What if we improve this one keyword and we get a kind of a click-through rate which doubles it? Then obviously you'll get a significant impact. And one of the things that I do always do is look at the SERPs myself. What I mean by that is that there was one keyword which I'm not going to pronounce because I can't speak Norwegian, but the click-through rate of it, we were at position 1 or 2, and the click-through rate for it was almost 0. And I was like, why are we? This is huge amounts of impressions, huge amounts of traffic. But as soon as I looked at it in Google, I saw that there was the map pack above us. And we couldn't compete with the map pack because we were online only and not in these particular areas. So it was kind of a big issue for us that we weren't going to get that traffic. But there wasn't very much we could really do about it. We could start to kind of do some sort of spammy stuff. And we did some bits and pieces, but we didn't do anything black hat. And we knew that the big supermarkets were going to get that traffic that had physical store locations because that's what the kind of Google had interpreted the intent to being. So always look at SERPs, but not just using tools, but using hands and eyes, like do it manually as well. But to do it aggregate, use a tool like SE ranking to kind of do it and segment and slice and dice it as much as possible.
Awesome, thank you. And I can totally relate with this because I had a new client, they had not done anything in the past, and then we started publishing, and the impressions started coming, and suddenly there were no impressions anymore. And that was like the key to realizing that we had been de-indexed. So yeah, this is like a very good metric to track, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
We have another question from Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew says, when it comes to client reports, is there one particular tool you would recommend to generate them?
So for the automated, I tend to go with Google Data Studio, which is now called Looker. Now, my last client did use a different tool called Looker, which sounds like the same, but it's just a different. Google bought both tools, basically. Google Data Studio was their in-house one. Then they bought a separate one, and they've called them both the same. But it really does depend. The kind of the key thing is basically whether or not you can present it right. And I've seen some amazing interactive reports generated in HTML for clients using kind of these cool tools and stuff like that. But honestly, I think that Data Studio is brilliant. One of the crap talks that I've kind of linked to is done by a lady called Annabelle St. Martin. She worked at Monzo, and she talks at great depth about how to really create these reports, how to make sure that there's kind of like a funnel and everything else like that. So as much as anything, it was down to design. When I started at Rise at 7, one of the first things that we did was design a fantastic template to try and make sure our reporting looked as good as possible, because I'm very conscious that people don't use these dashboard reports very much at all. But it is important that the more they look usable, the more functional, the better quality they look, the more accessible they look, the more they will be used. And like I say, one of my pet hates is the fact that often if you look at a report, it doesn't tell you where the data comes from or anything like that. So you kind of look at it and kind of go, okay, this doesn't match this doesn't match that. And what does this actually mean? So just enough explanation about it. And that's why I like things like Google Data Studio, is because you can put an explanation box or a logo next to it. So I put the data source, explanation, what it means, and as much kind of detail as possible on it. I have to be honest, I say I do that, but it's surprising how often I kind of build these things for myself and then share them, and I forget that nobody else knows exactly what I've done. So yeah, make sure you do it.
Love it, love it. I've used Google Data Studio myself. And do you um do you configure it with Google Sheets? Because the one I used, I think it was already configured by someone else.
Yeah. So Google Sheets is a great data source for it, and you can do a lot of things for it. One of the things that was a complaint about a lot of SEO reports is they don't say what happened and when. And you can use Google Sheets as kind of a, this is what we did, this is when we went live with this, and this is when this happened at this point. So I think what I'm getting at is the fact that you can log actions in Google Sheets as well. One of the things you can't do easily, I mean, there are hacks for this, and Chris Green's written a great blog post on it, but you can't kind of go, this happened here on a chart or something like that. So the two are kind of slightly separate. But it is kind of useful to make sure that you kind of do talk about what you've done. And of course, with Google Data Studio, you can say, show me all of the actions that have happened in the last month in this report or something similar. So you can kind of have funnels and filters and all sorts of bits and pieces. So, I've always been limited by my own imagination, for want of a better word. I often kind of go, oh, this is what I did in Data Studio. And then someone comes along and sort of kind of goes, oh, well, I did this and it looks like this. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's much more creative and intelligent than I've done. So, I think, what is their name? Rocket Studio, no, Rocket Mill in Brighton have done some amazing templates as well on that as well.
Oh, okay, because that's the next question I was going to ask. The
Yep.
question from Rick.
Yeah, so Rick's question, can you recommend nice templates? I think Aleda's done some of the best around. And I'm trying to remember the other person who, I'll add her links into some of the reports, but Noah Lerner, Aleda, and someone else. I'll remember it eventually. But basically, there's a lot of great reports out there by different people. But if you take a look at Aleda's website, she is probably the best person to kind of look at first of all. Within Google Data Studio, there are already templates built in there, but like I say, they're not perfect, and there are ways to tweak them and improve on them.
So I had one other question. You
Mhm.
talked about how UTM parameters are not, the very good to use in content itself. Does that apply to when you're tracking specific landing pages, like when you have a call to action in line, in the body of the text? Does not using UTM parameters, does it apply then also?
Yeah, so basically, internally, you should never use UTM parameters, ever. The reason why is the fact that it will kind of screw things up. There are other ways, and what people want to know is if you've clicked on something or done something. So I think that, you can use events, you can do all sorts of things. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Google Tag Manager, and you can kind of go, when someone clicks on this, and when someone does that, then do this. So there is a lot of ways in which you can do it, but UTM parameters is the worst way. I say if somebody does use them internally, it's not the end of the world. There are ways to kind of hack the data out of it, but it's just not perfect, and it will kind of screw up and lots of other problems as well.
Hmm.
I do use tools to basically find, in fact, I use SE ranking as well, one of the tools basically to find any time that somebody links within a site to the non-canonical page. And the reason I do this is because often I want to fix up that problem, but it does usually show up when people are using UTM parameters as a problem.
Okay. Oh, okay. So if I wanted to know that this conversion happened from this specific page, it's just smarter to do this in Google Analytics than
Yeah,
with.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can use events. So if you want to track a certain button, you can kind of go, when someone clicks on this button, fire an event. And again, you can use that using Google Tag Manager. But if you want to track a particular page, often it's the landing page report in Google Analytics. Now, one interesting thing is in GA4, the landing page report you almost had to rebuild it from compared with how it used to be. I believe they're introducing it now, but yeah.
Justin, I'm sorry, you said we mixed your question. Your question is not exactly clear.
Should we provide monthly reports to the client? So it depends. See, one of the it was an interesting argument that I got into on Twitter actually at one point, is the fact that one person said you'd always provide monthly reports to clients, and I kind of was like, well, it depends on what you're being paid to do. I kind of agree, but again, reports is something that you kind of 90% automate. What you should be doing is providing insights and recommendations all the time. What I mean by that is the fact that, I use tools to kind of constantly monitor a site, and anytime something goes wrong, that's when I kind of tell them about stuff. So it's a perpetual thing. In terms of reporting, I mean, if you've created a good set of dashboards and automation, then it's almost self-serving. But what you should be doing is looking to sort of spot problems. If you mentioned before, you can see if a website's dropped out of the index or something like that. So you should be the first person to be able to turn around to a client. So part of me thinks that monthly is almost too infrequently. I would want to be able to kind of say to a client on a weekly basis, this has happened, not on a monthly basis. Dashboards automation is the king.
We have another question from Heinz Digital. It says, what's your process for identifying a primary target keyword for article content? And if two keywords are equally relevant to the content with full volume trends, keyword difficulty and complexity, what next?
I mean, 9 times out of 10, you can have two primary keywords for and Google's less about keywords and more about entities and an understanding of the article. I mean, one of the things that I often find, in fact, one of the things I noticed quite recently when I was doing some analysis of a website was the fact that when I put in a key topic, Google actually, in fact, I was looking at a page basically. Google actually turned around and said to me that this is basically what this page is about, and these are the other pages on this particular topic. I hadn't seen it before, but apparently it's not new. It's where you kind of look at the information about a page, and it said to me, these are the other 5 pages that are actually about this. So I think that's quite important. So I don't have I basically say that you should almost identify as many keywords as possible for a particular article, rather than necessarily one. If you could only have one because it's the title tag or whatever, then you almost want to go with how users sort of think rather than anything else. You kind of go with what's natural for a user.
We have another question from Stu Hertz. I have 5 FAQs on my webpage. How do I know how many clicks I have gotten from a particular FAQ? Oh, this one's interesting.
I don't know. I have no idea, if I'm completely honest. This is one of those interesting ones where I couldn't honestly tell you. So I'm hoping that somebody else will comment on that one within the theme thing within the chat and give you an answer there. I don't know. Basically, what I would say is you can look in the keywords and you can look at like how people are kind of coming in. But yeah, as you say, if you've got like multiple kind of FAQs on a web page, you can't necessarily identify which one has been generating it unless you've got the keywords actual by volume. What I would say on that one though is often it's no, I'm sorry, don't know.
He has a follow. They have a follow-up question.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So no, basically, I don't know is the short answer. What I would say again is the fact that you could look into it by keywords and other bits and pieces. But if anybody else has got a better answer than I have, then great. To be honest, it's not something I've looked at a huge amount of. The reason why is because the website I've been working on for the last 12 months didn't actually have FAQ very much on it. We had recipes and lots of other bits and pieces. So I don't know the answer.
Awesome, because like lots of the clicks from the FAQs are right there on the SERPs itself. Right? Most people are viewing the answers there on the SERPs.
One thing I would say about Hotjar, by the way, is that it does slow down a site a lot more than some of the other tools do. So be careful with anything like Hotjar and make sure your page speed isn't impacted significantly. Microsoft's got their own analytics, which I can't remember the name of. But basically, what is Microsoft Analytics called now? But basically, the Microsoft one, that one is much faster than Hotjar. So if you're looking at a tool to kind of record users on your site, the Microsoft one's the one I
This is
recommend
good
right
for
now.
me to use this too.
Especially as it's free. I like the price. That's it. Microsoft Clarity. Thank you.
Awesome. So, Jerry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And to you, everyone in the chats and in the comments and everything, you guys have been amazing. All of you lovely people have been amazing. We're rounding up now, and if you have any more questions for Jerry, you can find him on social media, on his LinkedIn page and his Mastodon and Twitter accounts, and on his website. And if you haven't tried SE Ranking yet, check out the expanded free trial that gives you access to practically every tool and features in the platform. Some of the features that Jerry talked about are in the tool. So try that out. The link is in the comment right now. You can click on it and sign up for a free trial. And we also invite you to join the SE Rankings community on Facebook, where you can chat and exchange ideas with peers and SE Ranking team. You can ask questions and read about all the latest SEO news and enjoy several perks that are unique to the community alone. Again, the link is in the comments, so you can click that and join the community now. And if you already subscribed to SEO Ranking and maybe you need a little help getting started with SEO in general, you can take advantage of a free course to make sure that you have all the basics covered. And another course on content SEO is coming real soon, so be on the lookout as well. The link to the academy is in the comments as well. Thanks again for joining us. My name is Lily Borger, and I'm a content strategist, and you can find me at marketingcyborg.com, my newsletter where I talk about creating content and SEO content, and our Twitter community for Black professionals in the SEO community on Twitter at BDigitalUK. Thank you so much for joining us. You can also connect with the SEO Ranking team on Twitter, LinkedIn, and our YouTube channel and every other social media pages, so you can stay on top of everything and get access to all the freebies that we have.
Thank you, guys.